It's Rob Desai here. Just thought I'd give you a late night update on Hurricane Michael. The 2 a.m. advisory is now a 90 mile an hour category 1 hurricane, so it has continued to further strengthen. Just this earlier yesterday, it was a minimal category 1 with winds of 75, 80 miles per hour. It continues to strengthen as it starts to head into even further warmer waters of the Gulf of Mexico, and as the wind shear does slowly start to decrease throughout the region and is expected to rapidly intensify into a major Category 3 hurricane by this time tomorrow, and even earlier than that, even by tomorrow evening, as it says, National Hurricane Center does have major hurricane by 7 p.m. tomorrow. And then, of course, landfall in the Florida Panhandle will be happening sometime Wednesday morning into Wednesday afternoon. Now, if you look at Hurricane Michael right now on the satellite imagery, you can see that it definitely has gotten its act together recently, and it's looking like it's about to explode. As you can see, there's very cold cloud tops here, indicated by these white colors, and especially the pink colors in the center of this ball of convection right around here. So this thing is definitely going to start intensifying even further, not even quicker. And it doesn't look like the eye is clearing out yet, but the eye did attempt to clear out earlier, as you can see on the frame, on the satellite imagery, on the infrared. And I assume that the eye is going to start to clear out soon enough, and we should have a pretty well-defined eye by this morning in a few hours from now. And then as the eye does start to develop, and as Michael does start to get even further organized, the rapid intensification will ensue, and then it's basically off to the races from there until landfall. Now, if we look at the wind shear map at the moment, you can see that the wind shear in the Gulf of Mexico for most of the Gulf is still pretty high. Wind shear of about 40 knots just north of Michael, but there is some lower wind shear just to the south of that region, around the Yucatan Peninsula, and that will start heading into the Gulf, the low wind shear, once Michael also approaches the Gulf. And so Michael will be able to even further strengthen, and it will become a major hurricane as forecast by the National Hurricane Center. That's the most likely scenario, that it will become a major hurricane. And we can also look at the water temperatures. The Gulf of Mexico water temperatures are basically bath water. We get water of up to 30, 31 degrees Celsius here. It's basically upper 80s in terms of Fahrenheit. There's a small cooler pocket here where my mouse is at the moment, but that's still water of at least 28 degrees Celsius, which is enough for hurricanes to sustain themselves, even intensify. So there's really nothing that should be slowing Michael down. At the very least, it's going to maintain its intensity that it currently has. In worst case scenario, we could be looking at a Category 4 hurricane by Tuesday late night into early Wednesday morning. Now, looking at some of these graphics, the storm surge watch and warning graphic, you can see there's a storm surge warning basically for most of the Florida Panhandle region, up into some parts of the western Florida Peninsula. Basically, it runs from Tampa Bay region into around the Panama City area in the Florida Panhandle. There's also storm surge watch region running from St. Petersburg, Florida, and also in Pensacola, Florida, and in parts of the Alabama coast. And storm surge could be pretty high in these regions. Could be up to 12 feet of storm surge, which would be a very bad situation. Definitely a very bad situation for this area. And again, I hope that people are being prepared, as the time is quickly running out to get prepared and to evacuate if possible, of course. So hopefully everyone is staying safe and is heeding those evacuation orders as we speak. Looking at the potential rainfall amounts for Michael, you can see that this won't be as much of a rainmaker as Florence was for the North Carolina region, because Florence was, of course, stalling throughout the region, and it was impacting the Carolinas for multiple days, whereas Michael will be moving relatively fast, but it's still going to dump a lot of rain, especially if it does become a major hurricane, as there will be some very heavy rain, especially in the eye wall. And so NHC is forecasting a potential for 6 to 10 inches of rain for the Florida Panhandle region, and even 6 to 10 inches through much of even interior Georgia. And then further inland, of course, the rainfall amounts become a little less, but there's still even a potential for 4 to 6 inches of rain through South Carolina, and then a widespread area of 2 to 4 inches of rain throughout the Mid-Atlantic region and the rest of the Carolinas. And now if you look at the forecast discussion for Hurricane Michael, you can see the NHC does, they still have it peaking at 120 mile an hour Category 3 hurricane just before landfall. And then, of course, as it does start to move inland, it will start to weaken. Then it will actually strengthen once again, but that will be as a post-tropical and extratropical storm as it does approach the eastern seaboard. Now, if we do look at the projected path, though, you can see that, of course, Michael is forecast to be making landfall in pretty much around the Panama City region. And then it will be heading through the Carolinas. We'll be dumping some more heavy rain there. And you can also see that there are hurricane warnings now in effect for much of the Florida Panhandle. Basically, the whole Florida Panhandle actually is under hurricane warning. We also have some tropical storm warnings just to the south of that, and tropical storm warnings for Alabama. We also have some tropical storm watches for the Tampa Bay region and for the Mississippi coastline, even up into Louisiana. And of course, those hurricane warnings are still in effect for western Cuba, but those will most likely be dropped soon as Michael is starting to pull away from Cuba. Now, looking at the latest track models for Michael, you can see that they're all basically centered in on the one location on the Florida Panhandle near the Panama City region. So landfall in that area is looking like it's going to be the most likely scenario. And then once it does move inland, it will be cutting through Georgia and the Carolinas. And then it will be exiting through the Virginia area around the Delmarva Peninsula. And we'll be heading into the open waters of the Atlantic as a powerful post-tropical cyclone. After that, it should not be impacting any land. And looking at the intensity forecasts, you can see that majority of the models do have at least a Category 2 hurricane now. The models at least have a maintaining intensity. No model really shows much weakening from now until landfall. And the majority of models do have at least a Category 2, with some of the models, of course, do have it peaking at Category 3 strength. And there is the potential, however, that it could possibly strengthen even further than a Category 3, and it could even reach Category 4 status before it makes landfall. It's going to be a very dangerous and very bad situation for the Florida Panhandle. Now, if you look at the latest European model, the 001, you can see that it does have Michael making landfall right around Panama City, Florida. It's a very powerful system, 952 millibar pressure. That would be probably a very high-end Category 2 hurricane, possibly a Category 3 hurricane, which is pretty much in line with the NHC intensity forecast. And if you look at the GFS, to compare, the GFS does also have landfall in a similar location as the European model. Again, the models are pretty much in 100% agreement almost with the landfall location. The intensity forecast, though, is still a little bit, there's some disagreement with that, though, because if you do look at the GFS, it do show a 948 millibar system. That would probably most certainly be a Category 3 hurricane at landfall. And then, of course, we'll be cutting through the Carolinas as a weakening tropical storm, and then eventually a post-tropical cyclone. And then if we look at the rainfall potential, there's definitely potential for quite a bit of rainfall associated with Michael. And if we put this into motion, you can see that the GFS does show a total accumulated precipitation of up to 1 foot of rain in some of these areas here in the Panhandle of Florida. Even further inland, a lot of rain is definitely possible. As you can see, for some areas of southern Georgia, just north of where Michael will be making landfall, there's potential for up to 6 to even 8 inches of rain in extreme parts of southwestern Georgia. And for the Carolinas, there's a potential for 3 to even 4 inches of rain in much of the region. And then there's also the potential for 2 to 3 inches for much of the mid-Atlantic states. So this will definitely be quite a bit of rainfall associated with this system, and there could be some heavy flooding. Well, not just could be, there probably will be some heavy flooding associated with the system. And of course, there also will be some very strong winds, especially at the point and near the point of landfall, and especially in that right front quadrant of Michael when it does make landfall. I'll probably have another update sometime later tomorrow in the afternoon or the evening hours. Stay safe, everybody.